ahead. You deserve it. You do. I believe in all of you today. All right, there's your positive message. Not a lot to say today. Anybody have any announcements you want to make about community events that may or may not be coming up? Mary, hand. Give her a round of applause. Don't be shy. Mary, come on up here. Come on. What do you want to say? Wait.
I'm just here for the chicken biscuit. No. I have an announcement. So October 16th. The whole week is about celebrating our entrepreneurial community and the incredible talent and projects that are going on, which a lot of y'all are working on, which a lot of y'all are excited about. So next Thursday, we have an event called Kickoff Community Meeting, where we all get in one room and we brainstorm what amazing events we can have that will make this week special. So thank you.
Nicole Abrazizi from Co. The call for makers has been accepted, so you now have until July, I think, 31st to put in your application to display something that you're working on at Maker Faire, which will be in September. I'm going to probably continue harping about this for the next several weeks. So if you do something cool or like think about doing something cool, you should like commit to doing it off to the wonderful community makers in Chattanooga at Maker Faire Cha in the fall. So you can find out more information at makerfaircha.com or org. One of those TLDs.
All right. So, what do you want to eat, Kyle? Oh, yeah. Do it next time you come. It helps us get a good count on the food, because otherwise we end up under ordering, and then people go hungry. And you don't want to make people hungry, do you? No. All right. So one last thing. Scenic City Summit is coming up. Everybody knows what Scenic City Summit is? Yes? Raise your hand if you know. All right. For those of you who don't, it's Chattanooga's second annual Developer Summit conference, and that's happening what day? July 28th. That feels right. That feels right to me. I don't know. Confirm for yourselves. Use the Google. Buy a ticket. We'll see you there. Without further ado, everybody get over for Paul Schreiner from Audience Point. Paul, you know you should be excited if you've seen Paul speak before.
You should, yeah.
Take it away.
And the microphone is hot. A little tinny. Is that okay? Can you hear me okay? Good. Well, good. I'm excited. Yeah, no, it's all good. It's that awkward pause. Everyone's like, we're just going to watch him. Hey, there we go. So, we do the call for speakers occasionally, and I don't know, every time it comes out, I feel I think as many of us have. So then anytime this comes up, I say, how do I contribute? And so I was kind of chewing on what could I share that I think has the most benefit. And that's where I started chewing on it. It was like, what burns the majority of my time? It's probably bugs, fixes, all that stuff. And having done this now for almost, my goodness, I think it was 94, I started. I can figure out. There it goes. Starting in 94, I mean, I feel like I've hit lots of bugs and fixed lots of bugs, and it's like, so through this journey, I think there's some best practices I've run into, but I'm also a big fan of this idea of the collective intelligence in this room. I've and drive towards sort of hopefully all of us taking away something that makes us maybe a little more productive. I say I've ever thought about going postal, but I have. You know what I mean? And so like the goal here is, so if we're on a slide and you're like, I really want to contribute, please, by all means, contribute. I'm not that speaker that doesn't want to be interrupted. I'm probably it. So anyway, I wanted to give you a little backstory on me, because I also think this is one of those things we don't do when we're just drinking Diet Coke and eating veggie pizza, right? Been in the game since '94. I've programmed in most languages on projects. I always, anytime someone brings up C, I bow out. I don't know why. I just don't want to do it, and I haven't had to. I taught programming at Bellevue Community College in Washington State for, I want to say, 3 years. Worked at Microsoft, a bunch of startups. After that, moved over to a little town in Washington State called Port Townsend, where I hung my own shingle. And oh, you've never heard that? Hang your own shingle, you put up your own office, like, yeah, the Paul Schreiner Development Services started this company called Audience Point. And we're growing, and we're having to, there you go. The basic is bugs suck. They do, right? They just, at least in my head, they distract me from what I'm really wanting to do, right? Here is the burn down chart, the deliverables, the Gantt chart, whatever we're using at the time, project management. But here are the things that I need to get done, and oh, by the way, we found this in the code, we need you to fix it, right? And so now those timelines are off, right? Bugs always seem to take longer to fix. For the love of Pete, I can't get. Maybe stand on a chair too, John. Just kidding.
No, that's okay. This will be embarrassing enough. So Paul noticed that I was taking a lot of macaroni and cheese and no chicken, and I said, well, it's because of a software bug. And so what happened is I was at my dentist to do a couple crowns on my two front teeth. Small ones, they knock the end of the tooth off and they put the crown on. Off, it's miserable. Anyway, so they go and they knock the end off, and then they scan it so that they have the right 3D thing, and so he scans it, and it won't work, and it won't work, and it won't work. They're doing it. Report their loading patches
While he's in the chair.
while 4 hours. And they were about ready to make a rubber mold, and they finally did get it to scan, which was good, but then they couldn't get to really hitting temps. I used as little glue as possible. Don't floss and avoid eating anything you have to bite into to eat it. Hence the macaroni and cheese and not the chicken. Right. And so that's my bug story for this week.
And I think totally relevant to this discussion. Can I turn? Kyle,
sorry, you don't need that.
No, I don't. I think totally relevant to this discussion, right? The reality is bugs suck, right? They suck when you're hitting them. They suck when you're having to fix them. They're just miserable. Here's the thing that I think is important. No one writes bugs on purpose, right? No one does that. There's essentially corner cases or things that you didn't anticipate, right? Unless you have a non-every thing, like, we just need to account for everything, you're going to run into bugs. That's just the reality, right? No one writes bugs on purpose unless
The dentist's office, they're like, oh, we're supposed to pay for a new upgrade in another month or so, and they want to be sure that we don't try to live with the old software.
well,
And I'm thinking, getting a bug in there so the timing works.
right. So, but the idea is no one does this on purpose, right? It's sort of just part of the game. So the next thing I want to kind of talk about, sort of as we kind of venture our way down, is what I've found is every company I work for has a different name for them, right? And in some cases, we just call them bugs because it's easy. We got a bug here, right? And I've heard them called issues, defects, change requests. I've heard them called a lot of different things. My favorite right now is issue because I believe so we're not going to harm the egos and self-esteems of our incredible. I spent some time on our Slack Chadev channel to kind of talk through this, and even within that, there was different definitions for the same terms, right? So let's supposed to be. Whether or not this has been released into production be fixed. And here's the thing, and I don't know that you guys go through this, but I certainly do. When I've created a bug, when it's assigned to me, when I recognize it, I feel responsible. It's not just feeling responsible. I suck at that point. You know, I'm like this tall. I'm like, ah! And it's because I didn't account for this concept. So as much as I like to make fun of these people that make the concept of bug or issue more neutral sounding, I actually kind of as a developer appreciate that they're thinking about those things, because once we can kind of separate our emotional response from this thing to really just respond and say, okay, this is a defect, this is a problem. When I can remove my own emotional state, I'm a much better person. So here's the first. It's you catching them, but sometimes it's not. Do not use freeform, and that's something I would agree with completely, right? If you want, make them give it to you in the way that you want. And so the template, you know, the idea of up here, you know, they even noticed steps to reproduce. So one person on Chadev, and I don't remember who it was, said, you know, if you depending on who your audience is, taking the time to make sure that the language, even on the bug collection form, is clean, so more user-friendly if it's not a QA person, as opposed to what is the expected behavior, it's what did you expect to happen. I know Google has spent a lot of time on sort of public bug reports. I've been in talks where they're talking about, we changed the language subject, making it searchable, and one of the universal things that I heard sort of from the whole group and also believe completely is the ability and need filed it. And this that doesn't help me, right? We want to be able to not only want to be able to look at the subject line and figure out what it is or the title, but fix the bug, that becomes part of our knowledge base, right? Now it becomes part of the long-term sort of knowledge management things and say, no, that's so important. Who should write bugs? Obviously, we should be writing bugs on ourselves. That's one of those things that I think is super important. This is the whole concept of this is my fault. Being able to write it and say, this is what's happening, this is what's supposed to happen, because now it becomes a memory aid, it becomes part of through on this particular topic. Because often, and we know this just through regression, use those tools, air brakes, those kind of things that automatically add a bug to your database. One of the things that somebody said was really just camping out on is we have way too many signals, notifications, email, Slack, Basecamp, everything, right? And so the more of those strong of saying, hit a thumbs up, right? Because the thumbs up doesn't create a notification. Don't type a second Slack message to say, hey, sorry, universal feeling out of this. I mean, we know the rule of parsimony, right? The simplest solution is the best solution. So whether that's code, right? When you write code, keep it simple so that it's easy to read. So that was this thing, is automatic bug reporting. If we can clip the logs out of our application logs and include those in the automatic bug reporting, that just makes it so there's less finding, less switching throughout your process. QA testers, I don't know, how many people use QA and testers in their organization? I think that's becoming less and less true. I see one, I see that hand, I see that hand. I think that's becoming less true, right? There's a greater expectation that we as engineers keep our code clean and that we keep it bug-free. I do believe that there's still certainly a value for those testers. And I think it comes down to where your code's being used. But for now, I think that's that. And then lastly, customer reporting bugs. Hey, I was in the dental chair, and well, what happened? This is one of those things that I thought of, let's say last night. Do not reward bug counts. Do not give away. Now, Timmy has reported 1,300, and then as you get a bunch of crap bugs in, right? Like, come on. And they're bugging things like the font spacing, right? So I think when you reward bug counts, it reinforces the concept that you're good if you create a lot of bugs. We don't want a lot of bugs. We want good ones, right? Done with our dev, with our testers, with kind of all of those. We want good bugs. That's the goal here. We want to catch the things that matter, not the things that don't matter. So we do review the bug template. Hey, if anybody hasn't seen this, and it's like remedial, and all the smart kids in the room are like, this is so stupid. Can't believe Schreiner's making us do this. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. Precise in your bug write-ups, right? Like fluffy language. What are the things that matter? Get rid of everything else because it's only going to make it harder for you to track this link to GitHub or labels on a screenshot. If you have the gall to report a bug, we want you to report it in a way that it is absolutely understood. So take your little preview in Mac, put it on edit mode, and circle the things and draw a line. I mean, you get a screenshot with nothing on it that says, this screen doesn't work. Awesome. Thanks. Right? That is, it's like an automation tool, runs in Firefox, runs in different places. Now, this would only be true for web-based applications. It wouldn't be true for mobile, for other types. But the idea, it will reproduce the steps for you and you can watch it. That's fantastic. And it creates a script so you can attach that script to it. So it's always, this is maybe more true for junior teams or junior people, but the idea of like reinforcing one issue per ticket. If you have more than one issue, it will be rejected back to you. Break this into multiple tickets. Triage meetings, way more George Clooney and ER. I'm totally good with that. But the idea of a triage meeting is we look at the bug count and we go, all right, which ones of these, and we prioritize and we stack rank. We say, here's the ones that matter, here's the ones that don't. But, right, there's still this sense of you're on this shaky little pedestal. But when you have an entire team backing you on it, all of a sudden there's a whole team going, you're right, it's rejected, and it never comes back. That triage meeting is to protect you, the developer. That's been one of those things that for me, anytime we've instituted that, it frees me up substantially to reject without questions. And I think that's a powerful thing, at least for me. And then again, that thing that, again, universally people kind of said, want really bugs. But this is one of those things, organizations, the stages of bugs that you use may not be the stages of bugs that I use, and vice versa. And so there is this, there's some fluidity. In all of those bug like issue tracking tools, they allow you to essentially assign stage. And so this is one workflow. I think the key here is not necessarily to say this has to be the workflow process. You want your process to reflect as fixing or B, just kind of ignore it. That's what I have historically gone to. That's my go-to. My go-to is I'll just kind of ignore that one because I don't really want to dig in on that. When a better answer, if there needs to be an argument, like I need you to work on that, then that can take place, right? It allows things to get prioritized a little bit better. Could not reproduce. These are quotes from the Slack, and I thought absolutely fantastic, right? In my experience, could not reproduce means didn't have enough time to reproduce or enough energy to reproduce, right? There is certainly that. Like, I've tried this 2 times, still didn't work. Well, what did you try multiple browsers? What did you try? How did you try, right? So that's one thing. This was my favorite one. Of course, it could be an intermittent bug, and those things can go die in a fire, right? How we feel, right? Like if it's not reproducible, in everywhere I've ever worked, Confucius say, code that fixes self also breaks self, becomes a standard mantra, right? Like that idea of identifier, and I hate that's where a testing team is absolutely spectacular. I just need you to go work on this. For me, the instructions to reproduce were wrong. Obviously, it's always the person who reported the bug. It wasn't me that wasn't able to read them. And then the other thing, that idea of Selenium scripts. Reproduction steps are absolutely critical. That is certainly a reason to reject bugs, right? Like, hey, I could not reproduce, giving it back to the person that filed it. Severity versus complexity versus priority. This is one of those things on every bug in organizations. We have S and P. S equals severity, P equals priority. Developers get to set severity or complexity, and business owners get to set priority, right? And so we would then say, I want to fix all S1, P1 bugs. That's what a zero count looks like for us, is P1, S1 bugs. I think there's important power in that, right? This is a very easy bug to fix. It's like a S that has helped as we're going through sort of that, what is it that we're working on, what is it we're not, being able to say, listen, this is like a P3 and S3. Like, yes, I know you want every bug fixed, but no. This is one of the things that came out as well. Setting severity and priority, I think those are more important on larger teams than they are on smaller teams. If you live in a small team of 2-3 developers and you're spending a bunch of time burning time going, what severity bug is this? What's the complexity on this? It's probably a wasted effort. At the same time, when you do reach that point, these things help save the world. Getting better reproductions. This is one of those things I've seen too. And this goes all the way back. It started with MSN Messenger once they had screen sharing on it. I know, I just dated myself. That's okay, I don't mind. It's a safe place. But like bug back, and often when you reject it back, it's reproducible on their machine every single time. Right? And you're like, oh. So I say do a screen share. That makes a huge difference. Can you show me? Pull this up, walk me through it. So a TeamViewer then kicked in, and it was just a screen sharing app. And now I think we're using Hangouts and Zoom and all different things. But that's a huge time saver, at least on reproductions. Because again, if they can't do it, and then if you can't do that, get a video. I mean, presentation, I say, it should be your expectation that your code is broken unless you can prove that it's fixed, right? At the same time, I think that we should always be suspect of bugs that maybe we just don't have enough information about them. So create a video, right? Get a video, document this for me, because that's gonna help me a ton. And I don't think that there are excuses anymore because we have such an age to not have, right?
You have some tiny little database that you put 20 records in.
Yeah.
It's like someone needs to give you access to
right.
something that has pseudo-realistic data.
Sorry about breaking that cord. Nothing? Yeah, well, that's absolutely the case. Production environment versus staging or test environment, right?
An account on the production environment, but a lot of places at least use
memory accounts, whatever it is, you hit a ceiling that never happened, right? And I mean, it has happened, but it's been 2 or 3 years. We've been pretty stable, and it was a memory usage issue. We hit a ceiling that we just didn't anticipate, and I raised my hand. I said, it's my fault because I'm talking about bugs today. That's my bad. But you're exactly right. That idea of environment matters. And so if we can get any kind of reproduction, that's going to make life a ton easier. This is just, I don't care what it is, but for the love of God, use source. You know what I mean? Like, this is, again, to protect us. And you got this branch and that branch and all that. But for the love, like the second that you lose your code, come on. That's all on that topic. Oh, I did it again. I'm going to stop. Okay. Unit testing. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but the idea is anytime you have a bug, write a unit test to protect it, and you're probably going to get long lists of unit tests. That's okay. Unit tests are there, again, to protect you so that bugs don't come back. You don't get these regressions coming back in because you're still dealing with the same crowd of people. And if someone wrote a bug previously and it's found its way in, the likelihood that they're going to put that type of thing back in again, it's possible. So that was one of those universal things as well, is if you run into a bug, rest that protects against it. And then run your unit tests at least on every check-in, right? Run them all the time so that you can know what's breaking. Defends against the regression. Whole of that makes sense that people were pretty passionate about. They were like, we want everything logged. We want all details, log, X, right? And if there's a bunch of extra noise, it's just going to complicate your scan. So I had one person say, put equal signs in it, and just, here's your values that you care about in a 3-word explanation. But create and follow standards. Enforce standards on your logging so that we have indentation levels so that you can see severity and where things are, where you need really good logs, right? Because we can then track things. Yeah, this did happen, and here's why and how. Down there that can't hold something else. And then, notification tools. So same sort of space to for different reasons, right? So the project manager is looking at bug counts overall so that they can deliver. You've got executives looking in at this bug tracking system for their needs, and you've got developers looking in for their needs, and testers. Everyone has their own needs, right? So the idea of investing a little bit, both of money, time, people, energy, into your bug tracking is important. I've used a ton of them. These are just the ones that I could come to mind. Somebody wrote that they're using Trello. Man, Trello's great. It's a list tracking app. If that works for you guys, that seems to work pretty well for us, the issues and then tagging on that. And then also just Google Docs. Again, you need less complexity in your, sure, it's right. Tagging, this is one of those things a friend of mine was asking him about it. He's like, I tag everything. Every email that comes in, every issue, will have a minimum of 2 tags. Sometimes it'll have 10, right? As being your knowledge base for the organization. And so if you can search for enterprise, Redis, priority, what are the monikers that you would use in your brain, those memory links that you're going to come back to, so that you can search and you can say, these about right now. Think about that knowledge base as being a way to have less pain in the future. And so, an ounce of prevention, what do they say? Keeps the doctor. I'll show you. Which one is it?
4 or 5
See? I'll show you what I mean. Oh, no, presentation. Hanging off there, they're labels. So if I say new issue, we have a bunch of labels that are predefined that we use. We can add labels as we go. What's that? 2, right? So we want to tag things so that we can come back and track it. Those labels, again, can be a huge, it's essentially curating your bugs as content. And I realize that it may be totally normal for some, and for others it might be very
hard to figure out how to search.
Right. Then I have one more slide. If we ever get there. There we go. Look, it's a beautiful thing. And then the last thing was just, and I didn't have this slide. I put it up last night, and I thought it was actually pretty helpful. Campfire developers, right? That's one of the things. We're going to make mistakes. That's part of what we do. As much as I would love to hire programmers that never, ever, ever make mistakes, every time a mistake happens, I'm investing in the future of that person, right? And so I don't mind mistakes. I don't even mind mistakes if you repeat the same mistake twice. Then it's like, well, you probably should have caught that. But by the time it happens a 3rd time, then we have to have that hard conversation. But the idea that be humble. This stuff happens. And if we create that environment of neutrality, right, where it's issues happen, defects happen, code, there's a lot to it. And this is what I keep banging on. Be fully aware of the limits, like the plague. Keep things simple. It will you in the long run. And to that end, reduce the number of code paths, but those are really hard things to keep track of. I even brought a pen and paper.
Very cultural. Ask someone to help you look at a. So I think it may be very cultural. So if you look at a bug, what's their reaction? Is their reaction like, man, I got work I got to get done today? Or is their reaction like, well, sure, we're all in this together, we help each other? A lot of that's a culture, and I think a lot of technology people like us, we don't like to think about the human element of our code. We would like to keep it all nice and clean. Tell people, gee, your problem is X, you say, okay, he may know more than I do. Run
with him in 5 minutes. I was like, I've already solved this problem. I've already dealt with that pain. Use my pain instead of taking it on yourself. But he came from an environment where the idea was you didn't bring in teams, you didn't work together. That's not us, right? Our us is, let me help you so that you don't burn 4 hours on something you don't need to. That's a good comment, John. Anyone else?
So you made the statement that balancing priority and complexity is important. In a larger organization, of course, there's going to be more stakeholders, et cetera, complexity argument past.
And also, please feel free to respond, team, as a whole. I think it can be a little more organic, the whole complexity piece. It doesn't have to be as formal and score it 1 through 5. Because in a small team like that, it is much more organic, right? Like, that's not as hard. I think there's, if you're burning a bunch of time setting, you probably don't need to set that technically. Other ideas, thoughts, contributions?
You think you know, and you may get into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, awesome. Thank you guys for coming out. As always, it's fun. Yes, I'll clap too.
Paul.
Who's next week? Who's doing next week? It's going to be so good next week. It'll be way better than this week.